And when you're set to start the meeting, just let me know.
Got it. Just let me know. I think we're all set here.
Okay.
Okay. We'll call the City of Olivet Planning and Community Design Commission for March 18th, 2021 to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Rob Jurgle,
Present.
Carol Wagner,
Present.
Jody Rich here, Richard Brophy,
Present.
Ryan Lewis,
Present.
and Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Let it also be known that Carlos Trejo, the Director of Planning and Community Development, is in attendance, as well as Bridget Waters, Administrative Assistant, and Council Member Missy Waldman. All right, before we start, I just want to start off the meeting with kind of a quick remembrance, for Sanford Goldman, who was our past chairman, who this tonight marks the anniversary of 1 year. And so it's real sad. It's a sad note, but I'm sure he's looking down on us and is probably pulling his whatever remaining hair he had out with all these Zoom calls and everything like that. But, I think his presence is always felt whenever we're discussing things. So it's a good day to remember that. And then on a positive note, it is Missy's birthday. I won't give the year out, but happy birthday to Missy, and appreciate that she's here and spending tonight with us here. So thank you.
Happy birthday.
That being said, let's just kind of start the meeting. I'll just go give a quick rundown of the commission procedures. We'll have an opportunity for public comments at the beginning of the meeting as well as at the end of the meeting. We know with the Zoom, it makes it a little difficult, and we're getting better at this. Tonight actually also marks the 1 year anniversary that we've been doing Zoom calls. So I can't give too many excuses, but there's always a few hiccups here and there with the Zoom. So, bear with us as we go through this. And just as a reminder, if you do have a public comment, please raise your hand. There's a little icon at the bottom of the screen. Or if you want, you can type in your question or no. If your question or comment is related to anything that's on the agenda item, we ask you to wait until that agenda item is brought forth. At that time, we'll have a report discussed by Carlos Trejo, and then we'll have some discussion amongst the commission members, as well as we might bring in the applicant as well. But at the very end, before we do any votes, we do take public comments on any specific items. We do ask these be limited to 3 minutes to be respectful for everybody's time, and also to be respectful for everybody's opinions. And if you could, before you start off, any comments, if you could please state your name and address for the record. All right. That being said, before we get into consent business, Carlos, do we have any public comments right now?
I did have one hand up. I just want to make sure, Mr. Roach, do you have any questions?
No, I just wasn't sure. It didn't seem like either you guys could hear me or video, so I think it's probably deliberately that way now that I realize. So
Okay.
I think I'm fine now.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, good. Why don't we just take a quick minute in case somebody else has a question?
All the others that are on are associated with an agenda item, so I think we're good.
Good. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, consent business. And Carlos, you mentioned that, or you recommended that we move item B first, which is 16 Beverly Lane. The petition type is a site plan review for rooftop solar panel installation. The petitioner is Mr. and Mrs. Rana, and the property owner is Megan Hale with Rising Sun Solar. Carlos?
Chairman, this petition came in earlier last week, in which solar panels were proposed to be installed on the property there. They're in the rear of the house. However, the house has 2 different roof planes, as you can see in the existing aerial here. And they're putting the solar panels on each roof plane that faces the south. as you see in the lower right-hand corner in that diagram there. And the conditions for administrative review is that they have to be parallel with the roof plane, consistent of a traditional color that you would find on roofs, and grouped together. And because the roof line or the roof has two different planes, they're not grouped together. That's the only reason we're bringing them before the commission for approval, and that's why we placed it as a consent agenda item. They have had discussions with representatives of their subdivision. I do have an email from them that they're aware of the placement, and I do have the installer and the homeowner in attendance, but if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, or if there's any comments for the owner or the petitioner, I can bring them in.
Does anybody on the commission have any questions or comments?
Just, and I'll say this is selfishly because that's something I'm considering as well in different roof planes, but I'm wondering, Carlos, is it worth putting in our future stipulations that if they are different roof planes, that as long as they're uniform and like parallel, that's acceptable versus having to even bring this up in the future? But that's just my opinion of it.
I think it's a discussion worth having and maybe making that change. All the ones that we brought forth to the commission since those policies were set have been approved in there, and this would have expedited the process. They've been very courteous with us in there and bringing in the necessary plans for tonight's meeting, and also attending, which I do appreciate. But I think you're right. You know, in this case, if we would have had the administrative authority, and maybe because they're facing the back of the yard,
Right.
it would have been a little bit easier.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially if it's, you know, on the backside and it's doesn't impact the front visual. All right. That being said, I don't think we have a real need to bring the applicants on unless they want to.
And I'll let one second, Ms. Hell or Mr. Rana, if you want to speak before the commission, or else we'll go ahead and entertain a motion. And Chairman, I see no hands.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion, Chairman.
That'd be great.
Mr.
Brian?
Chairman, since these are on consent business, don't we want one motion for everything on consent business?
That's, yeah, we've done that before, but I think in this particular case, I think, Carlos, you prefer to do this
Yeah,
individually.
if we can do these individually.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tim.
As Brian, actually.
Oh, sorry, Brian.
It's okay. Motion to approve the petition for community design review for the installation of rooftop solar panels at 16 Beverly Lane is presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated March 18, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Motion's been made by Mr. Lewis and seconded by Ms. Wagner. Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Brophy,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Approved.
and Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
All right. And Chairman, just because the applicants are on, the next step is, of course, the permitting process. They've applied for the building permits, and of course, the plans that we receive are signed and sealed and all that, and will be reviewed for compliance with all the codes and structural requirements. They are still going through that review. So as soon as hopefully by early next week, we'll try to get those plans out for them. Again, thank you, Mr. Rana and Ms. Hale.
Yeah, thank you for being in attendance. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move back to item A, which is 1157 Indian Meadows Drive. The petition type is a community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a residential addition. The petitioner is Jim Bileski with Jim Bileski Architects. The property owner is Laura and Jabari Robinson.
Okay, Chairman, we have a petition for an addition to an existing home Address is 1157 Indian Meadows Drive. Your report has the diagrams identifying the location, aerial views of the surroundings, and you have the plans, including the floor plans and such. Really, the key items that the staff will be bringing to your attention, and the architect is here to address, is again the roof line. It is a flat roof. The mass kind of extends along here, so the existing roof line of the home will be going down to break up that, but the transition kind of happens here. It's just a flush area. The windows are higher up, and if you look at the floor plans, there's actually like a closet space in those back areas. It does have an exposure to kind of like a mezzanine level with the basement. And then there's the materials that we wanted to bring to the commission's attention, because they're using stucco. Now they're using the matching siding on the north elevation where the neighbor's at, and they're matching. But when they do the turn on the rear of their property and the internal part of the courtyard, they'll be using a stucco material. That being said, I mean, from a staff perspective, we don't have any objections. I think from the guidelines perspective, we need to bring those to the commission's attention for discussion. I've noted that to the architect who's here, Mr. Bileski, and he's done several homes throughout our community. He's always a great person to work with, and his designs are always top notch. So he is here to kind of talk to the commission on those. But before bringing him in, is there any questions that the commission may have? And again, these are not issues that are inconsistent with the code or the guidelines. These are items to bring to your attention for discussion with the architect in terms of why some of these design decisions were made.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Mr. Trejo a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Trejo, did you get anything from the trustees of the Indian Meadows subdivision?
No, I did forward copies of these PDFs of the packet that you have in your packet, along with the application to Ms. Shackelford. But as of date, I did not receive anything.
Okay, she
Now,
informed me
this
that
morning, also this morning, I had a discussion with the adjacent neighbor, Paul Wilson, and his wife, to see if there were any concerns. The primary concern was regarding stormwater, which they are providing on-site detention. It was a good day to talk about it with all the rain we had, and understand what concerns or issues they have.
All right, very good. I was informed that you got an email that the only thing that was just still bothersome to the trustees is what you brought out with regard to the different material of stucco on the other side. So the trustees support this project, but would like to hear the conversation with regard to those different materials and consideration of being consistent. Thank you very much. I am a trustee of the subdivision, and I was told that that was forwarded to the body. So I'm sorry it was not.
Missy, could you, you talked about you said that kind of fast, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. The trustees have a concern with the building materials?
It was just the difference of the materials, like Mr. Trejo had brought out with regard to the equal siding on one side and the stucco on the other. And I was told the trustee had forwarded something for you all to be aware of. And it was just similar to the concerns of the city. And I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. I'm not here to influence your decision, but I was told that the trustees did respond when in fact they had not responded to the Robinsons in the city for some time.
Do you know what that email says? Did you get a copy of it or anything?
It says that we support this project. The only concern we have is the difference of the materials. At the same time, we will support the decision that the body makes, because you are the overall reviewer of this stuff. We don't really have an issue with what this homeowner wants to do, but we want to make sure you address the concerns that were in the report on the materials. I think they've done a wonderful job. They've come in the community, and they're good. They're good folks, and they mean well.
No, good. Thanks. Sorry for the clarification, but I just wanted to make sure I was aware. All right, good. All right, does anybody have any initial questions for Carlos on this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
I was wondering if we have a front elevation to see how this roof line would appear from the front.
I believe there's one in your packet, the existing and proposed. There is no significant, okay, so they show the existing on page 2X. And you really wouldn't see that addition from that front elevation, because it runs directly behind it and below. Does that make sense, Ms. Wagner?
Yeah.
Okay. And in your packet, you do have a street view of the property. And there, and I'll bring that up to you, Chairman.
Good, good.
Jerry, can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead, Tim.
Do they typically tell us what color that's going to be, that color that stucco is going to be?
I think it says white. I noticed that on page sheet 4 in the rear west elevation, but there's a lot of shades of white.
And you should have on your screen a street view from Google. And where that deck extension is there at the rear of the property, which is on the left side of, excuse me, the right side of the house, is where the addition would be extending out from.
This is definitely a unique addition. I don't, so I definitely would be curious to hear from the architect.
Chairman, is it okay to bring them over?
That'd be great.
Okay, Mr. Bileski, I'm going to promote you as a panelist. And if you can state your name and also have your video accessible, it'd be appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Unmuting.
Good, good.
All right. So it sounds like the north side is the hottest topic here. We set out, unfortunately, this drawing shows a lot of technical data behind the skin. It's actually a lot cleaner looking. We are looking to preserve the right-hand side of the house with the vinyl siding and the roof coming down. And then there is a white, well, there's a brick wainscot that's painted white. It's a difficult transition to make. And so we're moving forward with not overstating the new work, but rather using the same material that's there, the vinyl siding, and bringing it to the back corner. And then at that back corner is where we transition to the actual stucco material. I mean, there's some consideration to doing the north side of the new work, the new addition, out of stucco as well. But we just kind of felt it was not a bad look to just continue the same material all along that north wall. It is a flat roof structure. We will have a gutter line along the top up there. The current house will continue to have its presence, and this will be an extension of that wall moving to the back. And then as we move around the addition, we are definitely into a modern addition to this house, where we've got the back elevation picture framed. I'm trying to scan through your
It's shown on the screen if you can see it.
through the exhibits. Yeah, I guess on the screen it's just fine here. The back is a very simple and symmetrical elevation, contrasting the existing house, accentuating the tall versus the horizontal. And then as we come around to the corner, we have some access. As Carlos was saying, it's about a 400 some odd square foot addition to the first floor, and it'll overlook the lower level. Eventually, I think the plan, they would like to do some more features in the backyard, maybe even a pool, and have this all tie together as such.
Okay,
But,
so-
Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to ask if any, I wasn't sure if you were done. And if you are, I might just ask to see if there's any specific questions that any of the commission members have for you. But if you're still continuing, please carry on.
No, I'm just rambling a little bit. It is predominantly white. Yeah, and it could be a shade of white. And then the windows will be black. But yeah, I'm open for questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Brophy.
Mr. Bolesky, thanks for taking the time to chat with us. My question relates to the window sizing and placement on the north side. One of the things that I'm always, I'll say, focused on is not having to make sure the massing looks right. And I'm a little concerned about the volume of vinyl siding kind of unobstructed that we're going to be looking at on that north elevation. Can you comment on that, whether there's any possibility of changing the size and shape of those windows, or if there's some reason that it's few and is located where they are?
There underneath the windows, there is a fair amount of siding there, yes. And the windows were meant to break that up a little bit up at the top. It's not a wall that they wanted a whole lot of fenestration on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I certainly understand. I suspect there's a house immediately adjacent that wall, and so they don't want to be just staring at their neighbors. I get that. But from my understanding, there's a decent amount of space between their property and the next. It's not like the next house butts right up to it. And so I'll note that on the backside elevation, there are lots of nice floor to ceiling windows. I'm wondering if you or if the owner would be willing to move some of those or copy some of those windows over to the north elevation to break up that vinyl siding slab a bit.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't lend itself on the interior of that lower level. We've got a stair running along that wall. And then we've actually got a storage room over there where the equipment and the sump will be contained. If I don't know if you guys have a lower level plan.
I can see that. Yeah, I guess I was mostly concerned with the main level, to be honest, because that's the part that people are going to be able to see driving by or walking by.
Yeah, the first floor level. Interestingly, and it's interesting you asked, because I recently have brought to the homeowner's attention that we ought to drop those windows down some 18 inches so that the heads align with the windows on the backside. Right. And I think we're, very close to going there. And that certainly couldn't hurt. Like I say, dropping them down some 18 inches.
Yeah.
So at least the heads are uniform.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that would help. It's just that they're tucked up way high, and then what we see and what Carlos has on the screen right now shows a cutaway with the staircase and some other details. But with that removed, what we'll really be seeing is just a mass of white. And I'm trying to come up with a way to break that up a bit. So moving the windows down would certainly go a long way to accomplishing that. Maybe making them slightly taller wouldn't be a terrible thing. Matching perhaps the height of some of the windows that are on the existing basement, height-wise. But anything we can do to break up that mass, I think would be appreciated.
I think that's certainly something I can reasonably discuss with the homeowners. I don't know, are they on the meeting? No? For some reason, they started off with this high window thing going, but I'm definitely I'm drawing on my AutoCAD right here as we look at this. But I'm definitely interested in dropping them down 18 inches. And
What's the height of those windows right now?
the
Or not
height of them right now,
the size, I should
2
say.
feet,
2 feet.
24 inch.
2 feet. And so the sill then would be about 7 feet off of the floor.
Where's the bed going to be placed in the master bedroom?
On
Is
the
that-
inside wall.
On the inside? Oh, okay, good, good.
Yeah, so there would be nothing really prohibiting us from making these a little bit taller, other than the fact that we really liked, I know that they liked the horizontal windows at this location. But if we wanted to go like a foot taller, make them 3 foot taller, if we felt like that would help a little bit.
I think it would. Dropping them down and adding a little bit of height, I think would go a long way to breaking up that wall.
Yeah, I'm doing it as we talk. Yeah, it looks reasonable to me, but I would have to confirm that with the homeowners.
Understood. To help you with your sales pitch, I'm going to suggest they need to do something.
Right.
So this
Sometimes
is
we need
good
your help.
selection. Yeah. You know, the other option would be some kind of wraparound deck or something, but something's got to go there. So maybe that'll help you get them across the finish line.
Yeah. So we're all in favor of dropping the windows and making them a foot taller.
Yeah,
It
I think,
sounds
I
like-
think it's, Mr. Chairman, I mean, if
Go
I
ahead.
may, I think it's definitely it needs something. And I don't know that, I don't feel like we need to specify that, but I think if we make that part of our conditions, that Carlos, I would be very comfortable leaving it to you, having heard this conversation, to give it final approval.
Carlos, are you okay with that?
Yes.
And I think what we could do is just give some general, terms like saying lower the windows to match, the top of the windows on the west face, as well as increasing the height of the vertical size of the windows, but then leave it up to, Carlos and the owner and the architect to work out some of the specific details.
I can do that.
Works for me.
Good, good. Okay, let's talk about the material choice that was in question. Does anybody have any specific questions or comments on that? I don't see any questions or comments, and I know, we've approved before the use of stucco. And I guess my personal feeling is the fact that the majority of that stucco is on the back side. I don't think it's necessarily going to impact. They're using the traditional material of the vinyl siding on the, that north face, which is the area that most people will see. And I do, I think it's good to have that transition wrapper, but I think it's going to be at the very end. Does anybody, other commission members, have any other thoughts or disagreements with that, or what are your thoughts?
I don't have any specific concerns. I note that it's facing the back. So if the owners of the property behind them have been notified and haven't expressed any concerns about it, I think the effect of it is fairly limited because of where it faces.
Seeing some heads nod. So does anybody have any dissenting thoughts on that? Okay, any other questions or concerns with these plans? Okay. Carlos, are there any public comments?
Chairman, there is nobody else on there that's associated, that's not associated with a other item on the agenda. So if anybody does want to speak, please raise your hand, but I think everybody that's left is associated with an agenda item.
Let's give it about 30 seconds.
Sure.
And maybe one of the commissioners can be ready with a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be ready with a motion if that's all right.
You're good.
All right, Chairman, there are none.
Okay, Mr. Brophy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a residential addition at 1157 Indian Meadows Drive as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated March 18th, 2021. Subject to any staff conditions noted therein, on further condition that staff work with the petitioner to address the massing concerns expressed by the commission during the approval process regarding the north-facing elevation.
Motion's been made and seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Motion was made by Mr. Brophy and seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, will you please call the roll call vote?
Yes, Chairman. Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Brophy,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes,
Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
Motion passes unanimously 6-0.
Okay. All right. Thank you for everybody there.
Thanks, Jim. I'm gonna move you over back to the attendee.
Okay, we'll move on to new business then. Item A is 7 Bon Air Drive. The petition type is a site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home. The petitioner is Oleg Durkok with Oleg Construction. Property owner is Oleg Construction LLC. And I apologize if I mispronounced anything, so bear with me. All right, Carlos.
Chairman, you received the staff report. The staff report identifies the location, placement, provides some aerial information regarding the property. It has been reviewed and it's compliant with the city's zoning regulations. The lot depth is deficient from a traditional lot, and therefore site plan review is required. And the reason we do site plan reviews is it's recognized that there's some deficiency on the lot size. Therefore, we want to put greater emphasis or care on the review as it impacts the lot within itself and adjacent properties. In this case, the lot depth's 127.5 where it should be 150 feet. So therefore, it's not as deep as a traditional lot, and that can have implications on the setbacks, on stormwater management and such. And in this case, the properties behind this are at a higher elevation, so that concern is kind of alleviated just because of the product of the contours and topography. But we did look at the how stormwater is impacted on the lower elevations. This is kind of on the crest of a hill, and the petitioner provided a pretty nice streetscape diagram so you can see the proposed new home with the adjacent properties in there. Overall, from chapter 425, our guidelines, we have no issues with the home design. I think they did a nice job addressing mass, roof line, articulation, materials. They all appear to be within the spirit and intent of the guidelines. On stormwater, we are concerned on the north end because of the driveway turnaround. The surveyor has provided some additional information today to kind of indicate, that they will maintain that driveway at a higher elevation than the first floor of the adjacent home, and try to redirect as much towards the street as possible. In the process, and then we were concerned about stormwater and the swell that they're showing on the southern side because it kind of turns quickly. Again, the surveyor has provided some response and notes to that. Understand that we are also requesting that they submit a landscape plan as part of the permitting process to help kind of alleviate or provide some additional remedies to how quickly that velocity would be turning and going to that, and also to address any loss of trees. Site grading overall, again, the concerns are more primarily to the south. because the property is significantly higher than the adjacent home there, and they're trying to address those within the revised site plan. They've talked to us today about the traffic mitigation during construction, so I think they've addressed all the issues and concerns that were noted in your staff report in there. The architect is here, and just a bit history. They initially submitted plans in December to their subdivision. This is the revised set reflecting the agreement between the subdivision trustees and the developer. I'll let them address if there was anything specific. And then this is what was provided to us. And again, this architect's done several homes in our community and always does a well job. Our inspectors enjoy working with them in terms of they comply all the information. There is a brick turnaround. I think I noted that in my staff report, but they did provide that. I kind of misread that on the plans. And outside of that, I don't have any questions. They're providing the stormwater in accordance with our code. And the architect is here to answer any questions. Again, we did speak with the trustees, kind of gave us a history, and they have submitted an email expressing their support.
Good. Does any of the commission members have a question for Carlos? Brian?
Carlos, maybe this isn't specific to this property, but I was looking at the trees and it sounds like they're removing 6, and part of your suggestions for approval is to replace at least 3 of them, if I'm correct. And then also the 2 that they're keeping, an arborist is going to look at, and either they need to treat or remove them. I am curious, the 2 that they may remove, would they have to replace those? And then also, what is the general, I guess, policy on tree removal and replacement, just for a stormwater, and also aesthetics perspective? I'm curious overall.
Great question. It was somewhat a process that we've initiated this year. In the 2 new home petitions that we received at last month, that we started requesting some of the replacement on the trees and the submission of a landscape plan in there. There isn't a rule of thumb yet of how many per se. The other one, there was about in our previous meeting, there was a property where roughly like about 8 to 10 trees were being removed, and we requested to replace at least 4 with 2-inch calipers. So in this case, I did a 2-for-1. The amount was a lot less. The ones that are the concerns within the boundaries, I didn't account for because I didn't know what their conditions would be. And again, they're kind of set off to the side. So I know that doesn't address your question, is but it's somewhat because this is new.
No, and that makes sense. And I wasn't specifically going after this property, but I maybe for a future meeting, I would be, we have to be, it's subjective, obviously, if the trees are in the middle of the property and it just doesn't make sense because you have to build a house. I get that, but I would like to, my concern is if people are removing 6, beautiful oaks that are 30 feet and take up a lot of root system, and they replace them with, half that number, but real small ones that really provide no value for stormwater, that's an interesting thing. So it's, again, similar to our urban agriculture. I don't think you can draw strong lines, but maybe we can put more direction in the future for you to help you with that. So something to consider for the future.
Absolutely. Appreciate
One other along those same lines, my understanding is that even if we put restrictions on builders when they're constructing the property, the fact of the matter is once we sign off and the building is complete, they can go in with a chainsaw and cut everything down, because we don't have any tree care requirements within all of that. I think maybe that's really a larger issue than something we can address this evening, but I wouldn't be opposed to having a conversation about putting some type of tree protection concept in place to stop that from happening in the future.
I'd support that too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, especially now that we've gotten through the animals.
Let's take up the next big subject. But I mean, it's not just trees either, right? It's landscaping. I mean, one of the things that I know people often suggest is, hey, we'll put shrubbery there, or we'll put a berm there to solve this problem. with the massing of some piece of architecture. And the problem is the next day they could cut it all down. So I don't know if it can be larger than just a tree conversation into, you know, all kinds of greenery and landscaping. I don't want to take on too much, but
And
it
maybe
seems like
it
it's all part of the same issue.
And I think one of the things we're still, and I know we're diving down a rabbit hole here, and Jonathan somewhere is smiling, but we want to, you know, continue on solutions for stormwater, whether it's rain barrels, whether it's those kind of things. Maybe it folds into that too.
Yeah.
So.
Good point. Good point. Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
Yes, I wanted to comment. I really like the overall design of this house. I think it's very nice. And I really like the roof line in particular and how it would seem to fit, although it's a bigger house, it's not gonna tower like so many of the new homes do. But I was a little concerned about the stormwater findings. And Carlos, I'm just not sure if that's something we really need to pursue here, or if that is something that you can deal with during construction or later on, or how we should tackle that.
Bear with me 1 second. Let me switch views here. I think from a, well, that's not what I was looking for. Bear with me 1 second. All right, I gotta stop sharing real quickly here. Just a technical difficulty here. Okay. I think it's something that from our staff, we're taking a stronger look on how these rotations work. And, you know, what we've heard from, and actually from one of our developers, Mr. Cohen, and then some of the best practices Jonathan was always pursuing is, you know, utilizing a landscape plan as a means to, again, address areas where we have more ability to encourage burning rain gardens and things of that nature to try to make these a little bit more palatable. The surveyor did respond to my concerns and comments. He believes that this would work, that they've taken consideration on how that swell was and those grades, and we'll follow through in that process. It looks tight and concerns about the volume, but I think, you know, again, using the right type of soils and some plantings, I'd be more comfortable with it. And that's what the goal of trying to get these landscape plans in place. It's always difficult because these are more, you know, black and white structured. The landscape plan, you know, gives me a little bit more flexibility to think beyond of just the contours. But I can understand they come in later in the process, or usually, you know, the purchaser will want or have some type of idea or thoughts that could change all, you know, how the swell works. So therefore, that's why, you know, from my end, I'd like a little bit more flexibility. I think it's noted that you know, we're concerned about this. We want to make sure it works. And I think I got enough flexibility here to follow up on it.
Could be a good place for a rain garden.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, any other questions before we bring on the petitioner? Seeing none, Carlos, can you bring on the petitioner?
Sure. Mr. Ivanchuk, I've transferred you over. And again, if you can identify, give us your name and address, and then if you can have your video on, it would be greatly appreciated.
Hi, Carlos. I actually don't have a video feature here.
Okay. right, so I have the architect Pavel Ivanchuk in here, Chairman, if there's any questions.
Great. Thank you, sir, for being online. Is there any commission members that have any questions or comments to speak to the architect? Well, surprisingly, we don't have any questions for you, but we do appreciate you being here, and it's a very nice design. I think a lot of members have already specified that, so thank you. One question I did have was the issues with the trustee group. If you don't mind asking, what some of those changes were.
Yes, I think it was just one really. So this particular builder, for all the projects we've done before, he likes to do a 2-story entry. And I think Anne would like to hear that they fought pretty hard to reduce that. And so that was the compromise, is to bring that down.
Good, good. I actually like it with this, the way it is, and I think we generally would have requested that as well. So appreciate that. Appreciate the trustees doing the work for us.
All right, it's a team effort.
Good, good. Exactly. Since I don't see any other questions or comments, if there are, please let me know, commission members. Okay, that being said, Carlos, are there any public comments?
I do have one person in attendance. If there are any comments regarding this application at 7 Bon Air, please show your hand. And Chairman, I'm not showing any response.
Great. Well, seeing none, do I hear a petition or a motion? I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I'll enter a motion to approve the petition for site plan, community design, and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 7 Bon Air Drive as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated March 18th, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted therein.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Brophy and seconded by Ms. Wagner. Carlos, will you please call the roll call vote?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Brophy,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes,
Chairman Jurgel,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Chairman.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for being on the line, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that being said, Carlos, did you have any more instructions that you needed to give?
No, they usually know the next step in the process.
Good, good, good. Okay, we'll move on to item B, Birdie Lane subdivision. Petition review is a vacation plat regarding reverting 137 square feet of private property to the public right-of-way along Old Bonham Road. Petitioner is Jeffrey Simon with the Sterling Group. Petitioner, property owner is 9411 Old Bonham Trust, Don Sider, trustee. Carlos?
Chairman, I'm just introducing this item because in accordance with our subdivision or regulations, a vacation requires a public hearing before the Planning and Community Design Commission. Now, this property is part of a preliminary subdivision plat that was approved by the commission probably about a month ago. And one of the things we noticed on that plat was that there's a jog here right off of Old Bonham. Hopefully you can see my my marker there in there. And we're this piece of property, it's a little over 100 square feet, actually is part of the public right of way, therefore belongs to the city of Olivet. We requested that they petition the city to vacate that. That means that they would get rid of this notch and it would become private property and part of their development. That requires a formal process in terms of the public hearing before the commission, a recommendation to the commission, to the council, and then ultimately approval by the city council. And here's another clip in there. I'd be glad to answer any questions regarding the procedures or process. At this point, we're not looking for any action. We're just informing the commission regarding the acceptance of the application, and that we would schedule the public hearing on April 15th.
Any commission members have any questions or comments for Carlos?
No.
Seeing none, I think these are all duly noted. Thanks, Carlos.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6, discussion items, residential stormwater requirements for new subdivisions. Carlos, do we have a report on this?
No, it's just as a discussion. Oh, I forgot I had this up. Just a general discussion regarding the residential stormwater requirements for new homes. Because of, a lot of what we see are infill housing. We adopted Chapter 422, which required new single-family homes to provide their own on-site detention within their lot. Since then, we've had a couple of lot splits and applied the same standard to those new lots that are created, because most of those do not go through an MSD review when somebody decides to split one lot into 1 or 2 or even 3 in there. But the Birdie Lane subdivision, that did have to go through MSD. They are having to provide public infrastructure in terms of their own subdivision detention. And I just wanted to bring to the commission's attention, I think it's worth kind of reviewing and taking an analysis of this. By our ordinance requirements, each new home within that subdivision by code has to provide their own on-site detention, even though that subdivision already provides its own on-site detention per MSD standards. So it's kind of double dipping in there and probably going above and beyond what the spirit and intent of this was in there. And I wanted to get some feedback from the commission. So ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is, like, in an existing lot condition, because we don't have the infrastructure in place, we require the new home to provide their own on-site detention. Birdie Lane, which is a new subdivision per MSD standards, will be providing their own detention on the subdivision. Now, as we're getting each individual single family home, we're asking them also to provide above and beyond what they're providing in MSD, their own on-site detention. And to some extent, I think that's requesting more than what's necessary.
Yeah, I understand. And it makes sense.
So, Sharon,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'm wondering, Carlos, you qualified that by saying to some extent we're duplicating. Could you kind of explain the to some extent?
Well, MSD is requiring them to calculate the subdivision and the proposed improvements so they could provide, a detention system on the property. In this case, they're providing 2 that essentially would be overseen by MSD. They remain private, but they report back to MSD. So that's handling the capacity of the stormwater for the subdivision with these improvements, the driveways, the homes in place. All of it has a standard that the new home has to provide its own on-site detention. Our standard is more stringent than MSD because we require the full footprint to provide capacity for the full footprint. MSD doesn't do that whole capacity component. They look for the difference in there, and that's why the word choice was used to that extent.
But the difference, since these are all brand new homes,
Correct.
the difference is going to be the entire roof.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
And let me ask you a question, because, having the detentions with each individual house, that does help prevent stormwater issues with adjacent neighbors.
Correct.
The subdivision detention deals with the subdivision as a whole. But you still, I'm hoping that they would build it right, but there's still that potential that one house is not installed, not built for, a long period of time. There's changes to the landscaping or whatever. And all of a sudden, the new house goes in and you get runoff onto adjacent neighbors and you have complaints.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
so Carlos, I could see some of your point for the initial new construction, but let's say it's 25 or 30 years later, whatever it is, and somebody's wants to tear down and redevelop the site, then then we don't know what's coming. So at that point, and the MSD is already constructed. So our rules would still apply easily. I'm just not sure that over the long haul, we have that many new subdivisions that are designing their own systems with MSD, that this is going to really be a citywide issue.
No, and I agree, and I don't anticipate, it'd be very slim to see another 10 lot subdivision. There may be one more lot or a combination of some larger lots that would come in place. It's just the spirit and intent of the ordinance as written was an understanding that a lot of the existing subdivisions in our community don't have modern infrastructure to address the current stormwater issues or those stormwater issues that would be created by new construction. In this case, you have a subdivision that's coming in that's being designed to today's standards for MSD and such, and will provide a subdivision, detention for subdivision. But I still have this requirement that even though they're doing that lot by lot, they need to provide additional detention in there. And I understand, I recognize what you're saying. It is kind of a conflict in there, but the intent of this ordinance was more about the, these infill housing where we don't have an opportunity to coordinate or address stormwater issues in a bigger, in a broader way, where in this case you have a subdivision that's providing it already, and they're what we would want to see for new construction as part of their requirements.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm mindful of your comment that although, and I'm also mindful of Carlos's, that there are modern standards being applied to this. However, this subdivision is also going to abut a number of different properties that were not built to those modern standards. And so there is the potential for there to be runoff. We can't guarantee that all the water for that subdivision is going to go into the MSD equipment that's being developed. I'm wondering if there's a middle ground here where, considering this is a special case, we say, look, you don't have to have retention for the full 100% of the entire roof area, but perhaps 30%, 50%, something to address the runoff that isn't going to go. No one can guarantee it's all going to go in the right place. So we address that by giving them, a little bit of a break on what they have to do, the amount of stormwater they have to house on each individual property. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
I was going to go on this. I was going to go on the same tangent as you, but I think that that we should require them to move up to our standards within MSD, what they're going to say. So if our standards are to bring in the roof line too, then they should economize for all the water that's coming off the square feet of the roof line in the MSD facility that they're recommending.
Yeah, I guess my only reaction to that, Tim, is the risk is still that not all the water is going to go there. If you've got runoff that's going into the backyard of that new house, we can't guarantee that's going to go to the MSD retention center. It may just go to the neighbor's property. And so having some house-to-house retention would aid in lowering that runoff that might otherwise go into somebody else's backyard.
When Carlos does his drainage evaluations, he basically looks at the different property and they have kind of basins, basically, where the water's going to go. So
Yeah.
maybe we could just do it by the percentage that's leaving, the site that won't enter the subdivision basin. Do it by a percentage based on those yard square footages.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm good with that.
The only other requirement that it would be is like the pop-ups, for that, to make sure that those pop-ups are directed to the subdivision, somehow flow into the subdivision retention basins.
Right. That makes sense.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'm just not seeing how we can authorize an exception to a city ordinance without another city ordinance saying that we're authorizing this unique exception.
And I thought, I'm sorry, pardon me.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Carol, I thought about the exact same issue. I guess the reason that I was okay with it, not that the fact that I'm okay with it means anything, but the reason I was okay with it is it sounds, from my understanding of what Carlos was saying, that the new retention will be on the properties. So the subdivision itself will be putting provisions in place to have that stormwater retained on site. So in some ways, we are still compliant with the stormwater requirements on a subdivision wide scale, perhaps not on a home by home scale, but that there is a private entity who is going to be responsible for building a stormwater retention facility that is going to address all of the residences for that property. So it seemed like it was still kind of within the spirit of the section.
I understand what you're saying, but that isn't really what the ordinance is saying.
I don't disagree.
So
Why don't we,
I'm still confused. I've got the same problem.
No,
instead of us debating it, go ahead, Carlos.
no, the reason I bring it in is because it would require a code change. I mean, the understanding here is as you know, these homes will be coming in soon. They're already applying for the subdivision improvements and getting prepared for the street placement. It's going to be an issue that I'm going to have to address in a couple of months. And again, I do have a concern that, I'm applying a standard above and beyond of what a traditional standard would be. Now, there are differences between what MSD requires and what the city requires. And I do like that, trying to find that midway point. But I think trying to make them comply fully with this standard is requesting it more than what's necessary.
If time is of the essence and we don't have that revision conducted, there could follow an appeal with, the Board of Appeals.
That is one process, but I think we're still about a couple of months away before we'll start seeing those houses.
Okay.
In there, so.
Good.
It seems this same issue could crop up, or not, perhaps not on the same scale, but if a developer buys up a larger property and cuts it into two, I can see a similar circumstance where they want to deal with stormwater for the project as a whole, as opposed to on a house by house basis. And I guess, Carlos, if we do make an amendment here, it seems like it would also address that possibility. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. We can have that discussion.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I mean, we have to be pretty specific to allow this one exception so that the kind of thing that Richard's describing doesn't happen, or because pretty soon we're denuding the value of the ordinance. I mean, if we start making exceptions, then why can't somebody else have an exception? I mean, we've got to be pretty specific about why in this particular case we're saying it would be okay, so that somebody else who comes in with the same kind of problem with the same case would then also qualify as an exception, but other new homes won't. Otherwise, the ordinance doesn't have much teeth anyway. I don't think that's really what we mean.
Well, I think maybe we could, caveat it whenever we have MSD, directly involved as another regulatory body, addressing these areas.
Well, MSD gets, is involved in some way often, and I'm not sure that that is really enough of a defining difference. I mean,
How is it defined when we do commercial properties, Carlos? And there's, stormwater detention requirements that usually get pushed back to MSD?
It's a threshold of what I believe when a lot exceeds 1 acre, then it's automatic that they're going to be petitioning for or submitting plans to MSD. Then MSD makes the decision of whether they're going to have actual detention or filtration systems in place, or a combination.
So how do our regulations, specify that? And can we use potentially similar language to address that?
We can, the criterion, the conditions for non-residential properties is just written differently in here. And this section, let's say, would not apply to Castlegate Villas or Hilltop Manor. I mean, it was solely created to address new detached single family homes. Most importantly, when we were getting development along Cherry Tree and Harvest, where they were in a denser area within inadequate infrastructure. And it's worked. I think it's worked well. So it is really narrowed down to apply just to single family homes and new construction. Now we've expanded it over time in there, but it was intended just for these tear downs for infill housing.
Right.
But it was never applicable to attached homes, multifamily, or even commercial. At that point, we just kind of worked with MSD through that process.
So Carlos, does it make sense? Are you proposing that we would take a look at language that you would propose as amending this section of the code?
Correct. That item 1 would have, would address like the requirement for infill housing that we traditionally see, and then a different requirement if it was part of a designed development that had its own on-site detention.
Got it.
Of some sort. I don't know what the language would be, but it avoids it from them having to provide twice the amount. At some point, it becomes unnecessary. You're asking for all this detention above and beyond of what a traditional ring would have, of course. Yesterday didn't help, but
it sounds like to some extent we want to encourage, if there is a larger development, encourage a more modern approach to stormwater management, right? Because doing it on a house by house basis probably isn't the most efficient or effective way to approach this. It's just that our hand has been forced because of the way that things are done. So maybe it's really beneficial to have that new language anyway.
And there will be, kind of looking at this further, is if one of these new homes in this subdivision decides to add an addition,
right?
That's not going to go to MSD,
right?
But it is going to have to comply with paragraph 2, where they may have to provide their own on-site detention or some type of rain garden to address that addition or add-on. So we're still protected from anything that happens after that home is built.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I propose that Carlos takes a swing at this, and then we take up this discussion after we've seen the language he proposes.
I concur. Yeah. Good. All right, Carlos, anything more on stormwater management?
Nope, that was the only thing. I still have one attendee. If there's any questions regarding this discussion item, if you'd like to comment, please raise your hand. All right, Chairman, showing none.
Okay, great. We'll move on to item number 7, other business. Item A is 9661 Old Bonham Road, Old Bonham Elementary School. This is related to the east parking lot modifications. Carlos?
Okay, Chairman, bear with me as I get to at the stop sharing. I got it now. Bear with me 1 second here.
No worries.
if you'll recall, late last year, we approved a site plan for a proposed renovation to an addition to Old Bonham Elementary School uh, at the property there at the bend here on Old Bonham. There were some renovations and or some improvements that were made from the original plans that came to the commission in here, and that's what this reflects. But what I'm gonna bring your attention to is this parking lot on the eastern side in here and the circulation patterns that they've had. And it wasn't clear on here what the intentions were with these islands. And there was some questions about the use of the that parking area for a hard surface play area, or was it just for parking and such? And what I recall, it was more specifically parking, but they've come back and they want to inquire of whether these islands, if this can be just one asphalt area and not have the islands in place to allow flexibility. From our end, our principal concern would be making sure that islands are used here and here for the direction of traffic and control that movement from turning in too quickly. What they'd like to do is just more or less have it open and striped in areas so they have more flexibility on its use. I told them I would bring this back to the commission to get an idea of the general thoughts before they submit a formal application in there.
Anybody on the commission have any initial thoughts?
That buffer that's between the people that are picking up the cars and the people that are going through the pickup area and exterior, that's definitely during school. I'm not sure if there wouldn't be a good idea to have at least those, so there's a break in there, that it's not going straight through there, that cars can't go straight into that pickup line or the carpool line.
Easier.
That's my only thing.
Commissioner Spiegelglass, which one specifically are you?
So if you look in the carpool lane right against the building, there's three basic islands, not the ones on the right-hand side of the screen. The three on the left-hand side of the screen is kind of buffering out that carpool lane where all the kids go and pick up everybody. I'm not sure if there shouldn't be some kind of a barrier there so cars don't go straight through there. And it kind of forces people to go where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly to how we put bollards at the McDonald's to make sure that people walking across don't get hit. Sorry, Carol, I apologize.
That's okay. Mr. Chairman, I just want to note that my parents live right by this lot, and I'm going by there often at 3:30 when their school's letting out and cars are picking up, and it's a real mess. And it just seems to me that the internal circulation on that lot is it's critical to moving those cars smoothly through that, which is a big issue right now. And I just think with the striping in the islands where it is now to maintain the circulation the way it's shown is just going to be really important. And I just don't see how not doing that is going to enhance the traffic situation. It wouldn't take much to make it almost as bad as it is now.
Yeah, I kind of agree with all your comments, but I do think some flexibility with that parking lot for different events, is probably their goal. That'd be my guess. And I'm wondering if there could be a little bit of a compromise with maybe reducing the size of some of those islands, but still have more distinct features as to what that drive-through lane is, to make sure that the flow, like everyone wants, continues, but you still could use that space for other events, you know, that they have, especially during periods of wet weather. And some of these events that I think I'm talking about is, you know, the after the school is there, you know, where they do a little bit of carnivals or, you know, different things like that. So I know that that's what they've used that blacktop in the past for, you know, where they move all the cars out and have a lot of different events. So, Carlos, did they give any indication as to what the striping that they're going for, you know? Is it going to be a major change in how many parking spaces are there?
It actually, no, the intent, at least of what they identified to me, was it was just a change in from going from curb, from you know, a raised curb to just keeping the area flat and markings on the asphalt. So and I'll get this other one up in just a second here. Overall, that there would be no significant change, it's my understanding, between the two. And bear with me, I should have that one up in front of you now. And you should be able to see the current diagram, and you know, visually there is no significant change in the stalls or the layout.
I think we're still seeing the one with the islands.
All right, let me stop here 1 second here, Chair. Bear with me 1 quick second here. All right, now I just got them in one. All right, share screen. Okay, so you should have the one that was before the commission earlier this year. And this is the diagram of the islands. You can see the entrance is the same. There's the dual lanes that kind of go around, come across, and then you can see how these kind of go are opposite and changing. Now I'm going to switch over to what's being proposed. And essentially it's the exact same thing, except those islands are striped as opposed to raised curbs. The diagonals are pretty much all the same. I'm going to go back to the one you saw. Here we go again. This is what's already gone through the commission. And you can see, you know, this is a raised curb. This is what's proposed, and instead of having it raised, it would be a stripe surface.
Commissioner.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not seeing how this impacts, you know, Carol, I understand your concern because, you know, I just was walking there today and it is busy for those few minutes. And I really think this larger parking lot's going to help that. I'm not sure that the raised or not raised is going to make any difference. And I tend to agree that it gives them a lot more flexibility for spring fling and other situations. Plus, if they ever wanted to restripe it in the future, the whole parking lot not dealing with raised items gives them that flexibility. I think if they find a better approach, better traffic flow personally. So I generally have no problem with this.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Another point I think is right now that blacktop is used even during school periods for playtime. Like people are out there playing soccer and capture the flag and all that stuff. If we put curbs up, that goes away. So I think there's a really nice dual purpose for this parking lot. They close the gates and the kids can play there. So I think we would do harm to that by requiring those curbs. So Carol, I share your concern as a as a resident that's also directly across the street. I do think though, I mean, from a purely physics perspective, if there's only one spigot in and one spigot out, how the organization goes on inside, I don't think really is going to impact the traffic flow as long as the cars can get in and don't block the road. And I think that's been the problem in the past. And it doesn't seem like what we're talking about is going to impact that one way or the other. In fact, to some extent, having the curbs there may make it harder for folks to get in, but that's outside of my area of expertise, obviously. So I guess this is a long-winded way of me saying, I think from a perspective of allowing full dynamic use of this space, I'd be in favor of just parking stripes as well.
Tim, do you have any other thoughts on that? How do you feel about this discussion?
I would still vote with mine where the 3 on the left-hand side, I think are important to keep those cars where they're actually picking up the kids as part of it. I think this is a big addition to what the size of it that it was before. And they're gonna play basketball and they could do everything on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, it kind of keeps the cars in check right when they're next to the building and picking up the kids. That would be my vote, but you know, I'm okay with whatever the commission decides together.
That's a fair point, though. I agree.
Go ahead, Carol.
I'm still, I mean, I understand that not having the raised curbs, it provides them with a lot more flexibility. I just don't think that when those cars are in there, they're gonna pay any attention to the striping. I mean, if you have a raised curb, they're gonna have to work with it and stay within the boundaries, but otherwise they're not gonna have to even look at it. I just think that makes a big difference. I would suggest, frankly, that before I would approve a change, I'd really like to hear from the transportation engineer about this lot. I mean, they can, I would be willing to let them try and convince me, but without that, I'd just be very hesitant to say that this would work.
Commissioner,
Go ahead.
I'm okay with that. I think listening to a transportation or a safety person from the school or the principal. But Carol, I don't believe they have raised curbs today. And again, walking by it or seeing it a couple times a week, I feel like the parents generally do respect. Partially that's because there are many teachers and administration out there directing people. So without the curbs today, they generally respect the process and flow. I'm not saying that the curbs wouldn't enforce it more. It absolutely would, because no one wants to drive over it. But I like your idea of maybe listening to a transportation person or a safety person.
That's true.
Go ahead, Miss Wagner.
Just so you all know, the parking lot today was one that I played on as a kid when I went to Obama, and that was a tennis court. So that lot, as it stands today, was sized for 3 tennis courts. That's where we played tennis, we played basketball. I mean, we played kickball on the side, you know. I mean, that was it. So it's not designed in any way at all for parking. And we suffer, those of us who have to go by it almost every day suffer because of that. I just think that anything they can do to improve the circulation and flow around there is going to be just a huge asset to everyone who has to try and deal with that traffic flow. And I would just extremely hesitant to make any kind of change without hearing from an expert that it will really work. Because I don't know that they're going to have people out there the way they do right now monitoring the internal traffic flow. I mean, are they committing to that? I mean, I understand that it kind of works internally now, but I mean, they've got people out there saying, go this way and go that way. You know, if those people aren't there, what's it going to do?
Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Brophy.
I think I think everyone's saying the same thing, and I think there are some unknowns that we just simply can't answer. I think it would make sense to ask someone from to come in and speak on the traffic issue, and someone else to come in who's a representative from the school to speak on how they're going to use this space. Right now they have plastic bollards up that they use to address Commissioner Spiegelglass's concerns. I think we need to know whether that's going to continue or not, because that may be a way to address Tim's concern without and still give full flexibility, but we don't know the answers to these things. I think we should ask for at least 2 people to come in and speak on this, answer some of our questions, and then we'll be in a better position to decide what to do.
I can do that. Yeah.
I concur. I think that sounds good. Carlos, you got that? You
Yes,
can
sir.
relate?
That helps me. Correct.
Okay, good. All right, I don't think we have any more discussion that's needed on this item. So seeing none, I'm going to move on to item B, 12 Forsythia Lane. This is related to some elevation modifications.
Chairman, there are some elevation modifications from the
Carlos?
approved set of plans.
Carlos, can you hold on real quick? Ms. Wagner has a question. I apologize.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, I need to recuse myself on this issue.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Carlos. Sorry about that.
There are some elevation modifications from the approved set of plans and I don't believe the petitioner is here. If they are, they can raise their hand that we're trying to get resolved in there, because they were going to extend the height of the first floor, which would be okay within all the dimensional criteria, but the plans we received showed a new garage door, new roof line and such, so we weren't sure exactly what their intent was. And again, I don't think the petitioner's here, so I'm going to ask if we can defer on this item.
Good. Okay, we'll do that, and we'll head on to meeting minutes, which I don't believe any were issued for this meeting.
No, Chairman, I'm going to ask if we can defer on that item also.
Okay, so we're moving along. Let's go to reports. Carlos.
You should have a schedule of reports up there. Next Tuesday, the first reading on the urban agriculture ordinance will be presented to the city council. The council the following day will host a retreat where they're going to talk about, of course, our upcoming fiscal year budget, economic development, the recent federal act providing assistance for COVID relief and such during the pandemic, and I believe also on the economic development. Then the council will host a work session on April 6th, and then at their first meeting on April 13th, regular meeting that is, they will have a public hearing on urban agriculture and then entertain a second reading or consideration for adoption. So that's their schedule. I just wanted to make sure the commission was aware. Again, Tuesday, it's going to be introduced, and then April 13th, there'd be a public hearing on urban agriculture.
Great.
Chairman, we did not receive any small petitions to place on the April 1st agenda. That is my son's spring break, so I am requesting that the meeting get canceled. And I hope that's okay with everyone.
I think we'll get approval, unless we want to revisit urban agriculture.
The greatest hits, yeah.
I'll be out of town if we're revisiting urban agriculture.
I think we have these recorded and we can just play one. So.
Yeah.
And then our first meeting then would be April 15th. I do have 2 new home petitions. Opus has submitted the development plans for the Irvington Rhyme Court that we're reviewing right now. And then we would have that public hearing for that Birdie Lane right away along Old Bottom Road.
Good.
Our May meetings are scheduled for the 6th and 20th. Regarding city events on COVID, we're slowly transitioning to a full opening here at the city center. We still haven't held any public meetings. I know the council will be having an in-house meeting for the retreat on March 24th, but I don't think there's any public access. I think that's going to be live streamed, but public won't be in the building. and I may be incorrect. I'll let the liaison answer that in there. I haven't heard when other boards or commissions would be transitioning to open meetings. We are conducting full inspections, including occupancies. That was noted at the last one. April 6th is, of course, election day. Today, the Creve Coeur Olivet Chamber had a candidate forum for their luncheon, in which Mr. Clark and Mr. Hanson were invited, along with representatives for the school board, and I think also the Creve Coeur alderman and mayor. March 30th, the school board will meet. We'll have a meet the candidates event. I believe that is also live streamed. And then as of yet, I don't believe a coffee with the mayor has been scheduled for April in there. Public Works wise, the MSD improvements, they continue. You might see some disruptions on Price Road right there just north of the synagogue as they're boring underneath that and heading eastward. On Olive, I think most of the work is complete. Those are two big lines that have kind of held up activities at the Olive Crossing development. Regarding Parks and Recreation, they're beginning spring break camp next week. And then in May 1st, they'll have Olivet and Bloom will have a Ask a Master Gardener event. On my department, we posted the position for a senior planner with the deadline next Friday for submissions. So we're hoping to see what we get in there. There was several other communities that were also posting planner positions, Clayton and Kirkwood at the same time. So it'll be interesting. Again, there was a lot of activity going on in there, and all our community along with there too are completely different type of communities. So looking forward to see what pool we get into. Regarding development updates, work continues on the Great Rivers Greenway Centennial Trail with the hope to start the Dealman connection that extends to Warson Park along with the community center, hopefully by this fall or early next year. Olive Crossing there at I-170 in there, it looks like MSD work on the 82nd Street component is complete. That was going underneath Olive. Now they're working south on the Lindy section. Most of it now is construction parking area. I think the infrastructure is in place. This April to May, we'll start seeing Ameren now come in and start work because they're going to start burying the overhead power lines that run diagonally on the site over 170. They won't be underneath it. Once they pass 170 on our side of town, they'll go downward and then be underground up to Olive, and then they'll come back up, head over Olive and through the CVS Chevy's area, right where the old railroad right away used to be. Olive Crossing will also hold a TIF meeting on May 29th, as they're looking to incorporate a residential component into the development. Depending on how that meeting goes, they would also have to come back to the commission, more than likely to amend their plan development ordinance and plans and their master plan.
Please, if you don't mind, let me, I realize you're speaking, but to the commission, to anybody listening, it is March 29th. I realize we can talk and not realize what we're saying.
Sure,
And you
thank
did
you.
say May. So it is March 29th. Forgive me, Carlos.
No, I appreciate that. So for the correction. Plant Haven Commercial Center, work is going on. They picked up their MSD permits, placed their deposits. You can see the foundation being set along with the plumbing, and they're moving right along. Of course, the Seasonal Garden Center will be up and running just on the west side of the bowling alley as construction continues for their permanent location there. City Center redevelopment area, that's the Oliver. It's looking pretty neat. They're working on their plumbing and footings and advertising for fall leasing. So things will be exciting once the framing starts going up. It should move pretty quickly. Easy Storage, they are in discussions with the city. It's been a slow progress, but they're still committed to the site. They're trying to work out some issues they've had with the county on how properties are being assessed. Especially like the ones that were approved here, where you have a commercial component on the first floor and then storage on top. The county is considering it as if it was a full office type of use. And it kind of impacted how, what they were budgeting for their assessments. So there's a little concern on that. We don't anticipate any changes in there. They're just trying to figure out means and methods of how the assessors looking at those properties. And then Firestone, talked with Mr. Burford today. He's looking at a scheduled closing by the end of this month. That's the owner of Olivet 66. We haven't received any demo permits, but they did request the city to sign their plats and such, so everything's are coming in line. I anticipate they'll start construction in spring, and their goal is to open by this November. And there, so it's a lot of neat activity along the corridor that's going on. And I don't know if you've read on the U City side, it looks like the council has approved rezoning for the redevelopment, a portion of the redevelopment on the north side of Olive, which would supposedly include that would include a Costco development. I know there are still some issues that they need to work out with the Missouri Department of Transportation in their requirements. We know that because it is possible that MoDOT will require some improvements on our side as part of that development to try to balance traffic at the interchange. I think that covers all the items I had. I'll be glad to answer any questions, Chairman.
Any questions from any commission members? No, it's a great report, Carlos, as usual. Missy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And like you just said, I will ditto as usual. Mr. Trejos does a wonderful job. And just every once in a forum, I gotta kind of slip my comments in there.
It's your birthday.
So, as usual, he always does a great job. I appreciate you all. We do have an election coming up. Please do not take it for granted. Elections are important. We've learned that in a big way this year and last year. And it's important that we be able to continue the mission that we've been doing and the mission that I love that you've been doing. So again, I always sign off with, I really, really appreciate all of you very much. And you're the best gift I could ever have on this very special day. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Missy, and happy birthday again. And
Thanks.
does anybody else on the commission have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I think we'll move to adjourn at 8:39 p.m. Sanford would be very proud, everybody, with a full agenda that we had. So, Carlos, thanks for having all the reports and everything in order.
Congratulations. man.
Congrats. Yes, this is nice.